All right, what's going on, everyone? So, I decided after doing today's stream that I was going about building this all wrong. So, if you're joining us now and you're going to be watching these videos in order, heaven forbid that you've done and made that mistake. Um, I think that this is probably, this is what game design looks like, right? You mess up, you find out where you messed up, you think about it a new way. And I realized I've been approaching the development of this game way too disorganized, and I think that I have a new method to make not only my videos a little bit more streamlined, but also be content rich and allow me to do more explaining. I've been getting quite a bit of feedback now, just from a few of you who've been subscribing recently, so thank you for the new subscribers. And those of you that are just kind of joining in, who've been commenting on liking some of the formats I'm using and being interested in learning more. So I'm going to try to put some more emphasis in that in each of my videos. I will be making cuts, so hopefully I'll be having like recap videos and some other stuff. So give me a second here while I set this up. All right. We know what to do here. So now that I'm all squared away and I can get kind of showing you how I'm going to organize and maybe this will help you, let's cue that intro and then we'll jump into the video. All right. Welcome. Gotta sign into chat real quick. Kind of always like this, isn't it? All right. Send me a message here and let me know if you're watching. It is a process. All right. I want to see if that's coming through. Oh, perfect. I believe I've got that all set up now. I'd like to believe I got it all set up. Let's go. Let's see here. Oh my goodness. Okay. There we go. Now we're all good. Okay, so let me know if the music's too loud. Otherwise, I'm gonna just kind of jump into this. Okay, well, that's good. All right. So the first thing that kind of stood out to me when I was doing the other video was that I didn't really have my data structure set up the way I wanted. So if you guys are coming in and you're catching this now, I've scrapped that inventory script and I've done a couple changes, and I just want to kind of show what my process is going to look like now. So what I've done for myself, because I kind of need to do this, is start thinking about what I'm doing in a written way and keeping it as simple as I can. So these are, I'm gonna start calling these my briefs. So whenever I'm doing one of these videos, I'm gonna be checking my briefs and kind of creating that structure. So I'm gonna move this over here and we're gonna start on this inventory system one more time. And I'm going to go over what changes I've made over the last few hours. So firstly, in our player, I've created a structure, which an array. So this is like a dictionary if you're coming in from other languages, or in this case, a structure, which can hold each slot. Whereas like an array is 0, 1, 2, 3, and no matter what, like that's the ID of that number. A dictionary or a structure can have a string as an identifier, not just a number value or an integer. So we're able to store multiple things, including other arrays, inside of a structure. So after creating, before we had a inventory a max size, or it was called inventory slots. So in this case, I've created an array for heavy items, which we're going to be storing data in heavy items. It's just an empty array for now, but we're going to want an ID for the item, and also a weight, how much we're going to restrict from the player. And where you can add those in real time in the engine, we don't need to predefine them, so that's kind of nice. So we also need an index, which is the number of times we count in our in a loop format. And so I'll show you what I'm talking about in a minute. But item square map, it's an empty array. This is going to map our squares, the individual squares of our inventory, and the items that would be stored in that particular ID. We have a max size, which is the total size of our inventory, the amount of slots. We have square IDs, which is each square, inventory square, getting its own ID. The used size, how many slots we've used out of our total. And so this is kind of like our cube count, like we had before. And then we have visible. Is the inventory visible? So with that, what I've done is I've gone and created the external layout from one of my previous videos. It was already there. I'm using that now to generate the inventory, or rather will be. And so right now in the player's finite state machine, I've toggled the inventory visibility when it is false. Run the inventory manager. We'll do this again when it's true as well. But if we set it to true, none of our player controls work. And we added a new feature in our initialization. For each instance of player, initialize the finite state machine, the initializer, which then allows them to go through these events. All right. Oh, this is GDevelop. This is GDevelop 5.3. Welcome, Latte. How you doing? Excuse me while I drink water. Um, okay, so now that our players are individually, because we will be having multiplayer, and later I'll be running it's called THNK or Think, I think, which is a multiplayer engine backend for GDevelop. And so I'll be integrating that into a server client so we can play local multiplayer as well as hosted multiplayer. Okay, so right now I guess we'll be generating the inventory later on this module, but for right now, in the inventory manager, as we start the game, start building this thing. So originally, we were spawning and creating our inventory based upon a position from a we were using the inventory origin, but we're not gonna we had created this inventory origin to function like the inventory or the world generator that we created, the biome generator. And oh my goodness. People are blowing me up in the Discord for GDevelop. That's funny. So so we were using a spawn point origin on our map, but we don't need that anymore. So what I've decided to do instead is create a data structure for myself. So I know this is what we're going to need. So everything I kind of described and shown you in the player, here is it written visually. Close the inventory. There we go. Here's it written visually for us to kind of see. So the max size is the integer for total inventory squares. Used occupied squares, right? So you guys can read that whenever, as we're working here. But we need to start initializing. Let's go in here and say at the beginning of the scene. So at the beginning of the scene, for each player, because we're going to start thinking about building into our multiplayer. I don't want to have to go backwards and redesign all of these elements. The nice part is with developing, although the player inventory is a local variable, that means that players could potentially change these things. The server will be generating the information kind of in a real-timey sort of way, and as the system knows what it drops from the server, it'll be sending those to the player, and there's no way for the player to then send something back that they didn't have. So they won't be able to hack their inventories or anything like that because our servers. Hey, Lime, I don't Limesta? Lime? I'm gonna call you Lime? Limesta? Limesta? Lime like gangster, but Limesta? Or like Slimesta? I don't know. Oh, okay, okay. Welcome. So what I was saying is that I'm redoing the inventory system again. And I came up with I think a better way of doing it using a modula rather than using some other logic that I had going on. It was just kind of messy. And so I'm gonna kind of address that here. So at the beginning of the scene though, we want to effectively create everything that we did before in that kind of messy script. We can do this so much faster now. So for every object, and in this case for every player, because this will be multiplayer, so we want to start isolating our script to sort of for each instance of the player that's generated, and later we'll decide, like, based on user IDs and other metrics that you know, our standard passing information between the servers and stuff. We'll be able to get the player's ID based on their login and other such things. But for now, especially for like co-op, I could just spawn 2 instances of player, and if there's like an extra controller, we can assign those keys to that controller, and they just control the node on the same screen, right? Because it's split screen. So anyways, we'll get into multiplayer stuff later on. I don't want to spend too much time on that now. We're trying to explain something that won't even matter for a while. But the first thing we want to do for each instance of player is set the player's inventory index. So I like doing, you could go in and select player and then type variable, but I really like going into here, doing it from the actions section and saying for the player's variable index, and this is the inventory index. So rather than the way we're using before, we were doing a position X, position Y. Instead of doing that, it's much simpler to just do one variable and set that to, we'll start it at 0. So rather than saying go to, because an array begins at 0, because we're about to do a repeater, which rather than doing a looping Boolean script, which runs a ridiculous amounts of times, and we don't want it to do that, this is a much cleaner, restricted way, so that it doesn't just carry off and print endlessly and print faster because there's more frame rates or something crazy, which is something I was encountering in my previous video. So once the variable here is set to 0, we want to then do a repeat. Oh my goodness. So repeat, and we want to repeat the player's inventory's max size. So in this case, player inventory, oops, that's direction, inventory, max size. We want to do this that many times. And since we're setting it to 0 and the array begins at 0, we don't have to -1, which makes it very you don't have to do any of that hard math. And then while this is true, we don't need to do this one time because we've already for each number of these times, this is meaning doing it one time exactly per number of times, we're going to do something called a modula. And so we're taking the screen size, but we're starting at the axis of 0, 0, which is the top left corner, the origin of the canvas, right here. And in other languages, a modula would look like this. So you're taking, this is what a modula is. So it's like the difference between something. And it returns a number like, so, you know, if I'm at like player index of 1 to 32, multiplying that by, you know, let me just pull it up and I'll show you here. It's hard to explain. So rather than writing it that way, we can't do that in this engine. If it was a coding language, you would write it like this. The X would equal this value. But since we're using gdevelop, I had to figure out what the function was to be able to do this. And now we can create an object, and we want to create the inventory square at the X position of mod. And this is the modula, and it takes 2 values, as you saw there, number X, number Y. And we're going to say we want to modulate the player inventory index, and we're going to modulate it against 32 because that's the canvas size for the inventory system, where everything else in our game is on a 16 by 16. This is yeah, anyways, this is 32. And then so we want to do we want to modulate or modular this, but then we want to, on the y-axis, we want to return, because we're multiplying over, right? We're doing it in a line currently. We need to return similarly on the y, and to do that we go, we want to return a full integer because we have to do a division in this. So we have to do the player inventory index, which some of this will go over people's heads, and that's totally fine. Just follow along, and I'll learn you. Inventory index, and we're going to divide this one by 32, and then we're going to multiply that by 32. And so because we're dividing by such a number, we would be getting floats back, which is like points or percentages, pennies on the dollar, if you will. And so by returning an int in here, we force it to give us a rounded full number. And we're going to put that on the UI scale. And currently the UI is set to 16 by 16, so it'll still work, but then it's also going to shrink it down. So that's fine. And then we want to, for every instance that this is happening, rather than, doing it for each one that we're creating, we're effectively doing the same thing. It's just being way more organized. We're going to add a variable, and here we're going to set the index of the player, and instead of set 2, we're going to add 1 through each of those rotations. And then what we want to do is change the variable of the players. Instead of index, we want to store this, because now we're storing something into the square IDs array. And so this way, so basically what we're doing is, as we're adding an index and as it begins to count, so let me pull this up so I can show this to you visually. Turn this off. Oh, turn this off. Let's do black. Okay, so as we create our cubes in this direction for now, we're creating them from those positions, index 1, index 2, index 3, and it's multiplying by, while we're dividing and everything, we're keeping it on that row, and then we can reset that down and over again to like break it like we had done previously. But for now, we're just printing in a line. Now when we make this, it becomes ID 1 because we're counting 0, and then as soon as we make one, it gets counted as 1 from the top right corner, some 0 0. So then we're multiplying by 30 and dividing by 32 with that mod, and that's how we're developing this grid. And now that we have that, and we have this ID, when we're done with it, we want to plus 1 to the next ID. Well, that looks choppy. So we just know that I want to add oh, this is buggy. I want to add 1. Give me this. There we go. That's why. Yeah, I want to add 1. And so that way it knows to count the next one. But what I also want it to do is to take the number that it is, which just happens in the first case to be 1, and send that to a storage database. And I want it to remember that basically we're saying the last one created is a particular ID number, and that's the storage ID. And that way, as we're developing, we can say, hey, check for what the last inventory number was and reduce from that number or gain from that number, rather than doing a bunch of looping and circle logic. So we need to add, and so here we, instead of adding something, we're going to set it to the player's inventory index, as I just explained. Oops, not that one, this one. Oops, this one. Let me do it. There we go. Okay, so now when I run this, 1 2 3 4 5, we have 5. And if I go to our game scene and go to our player, go to the variable, I have set the index max size right here. And actually what we want to do is we'll do 0. And then we'll go into our inventory manager. And here, at the beginning of each instance for the players, not only are we going to set the index to 0, but we also want to set, or we want to now set our max size. And this just allows us to edit this on the fly. So now we'll do 8, for example. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So now we have the generation. As many as we create, it'll go on render. And this is, of course, at the beginning of the scene. We haven't created the loops and the logic to return and edit this yet, but that comes in time. So for our first little brief, we've now completed all of this. And we have the logic from our previous script that we can implement, and we will implement some of it. But we've done this in such a more refined way now that it shouldn't be as messy. And now we're preemptively storing some data. We're doing a little bit of forethought work. So let me pull up my next brief, and then we'll go from there. So the next thing that I want is a debugger. So we already have our debug script, which is kind of being covered by the inventory right now. So what we can do is go into here, grab this text. Let's pull this down and preview our game again and turn on our debugger. That it didn't do anything because I'm probably rendering it. Where is the debug events? There we go. Oh yeah. Okay. Let's set this to over here. Okay. Perfect. So now we have our inventory over here, and we can see our beautiful debug screen. Well, now I want to see that visually. So we're going to add more text to this poor thing. So we're going to add a new line, and we're going to start with adding the weight. And so what we want to do, let's see here. We want to set this to weight. And then we want to set this to toString. And we want a variable. So we will do player dot inventory used size. So this is how much we're using in our inventory right now. Organizing spaghetti. Yeah. Let's see here. I got distracted. Okay, so now that we have that, I'm just going to copy this and add a new line. Wow. What'd I do? Plus. Oh, I forgot to add a plus here. Plus new line. And then we're going to set this one to limit. So this one is limit, and we'll use the max size for that one. And then after limit, we want weight. Why would I want... Am I crazy? Why did I do that? Limit text, size text. I guess that's probably it. I don't really need... So I have 0 weight currently, and my limit is 8. And if I wanted to, we could start... we can check, I believe, each of these... Oh, we haven't assigned them IDs yet. We just know what the last ID was that was used. We'll assign each one its own ID and store it in the array when we start doing the the next part. Let's see. I gotta look at my briefings. Let's go briefs. So now that we have initialized the scene setup, now we want to start adding our actual system. So, all right, let's see. So, no, that's not the right one. Where did I put these? I need like a, I swear, I'm going to get a pegboard next to me and I'm going to start writing them on flashcards and putting them on the wall so I can't lose where I move them. Where did I put it? I had a whole list of these things and now I can't find any of them but the first one. Where? The briefs don't do me any good if they're not in my hand. Well played, sir. Well played. Let's see here. All right, so let's get started here. We're gonna do we're gonna start fleshing out this initialization just a little bit more. That's what I thought I put them. I thought they were sticky notes, and I don't know where they went off to. I'm gonna start putting them, like, I need them not to be digital so I can put them on my actual forehead. Put them in like a pile and or something. I don't know. I need flashcards here, guys. So we want to the okay. For each player, we now need to set the max size, the used size to their starting values, which we've done inside of the player, inside of this. But to be thorough in our scripting and to make sure that there's no room for error, we can set for each player the size and the used size. And that could change. I mean, we want to kind of initialize with that. And then later load in different memory. Yeah. Draw it on the wall, and that way if you lose it, you've probably been relocated. That you're right. That is like That is the correct answer. That uh, okay. Uh, we want to set uh, the square IDs now. So now that we've kind of pushed them, we want to start setting them into our array. And honestly, we're gonna create another array system here. So at the beginning, or just beginning of the scene, let's see. Yeah, so at the, okay, yeah. At the beginning of the scene, again, for each player, we're going to now clear the array because we're initializing. We're still initializing. Honestly, actually, I can just put this here. Let's add some comments so I don't lose track of what I'm doing. I have a tendency to do so. So here, we're going to add a comment. This is for setting or building inventory. And then this one, give me another one, please, is for clearing the initial array. So this will be for the first time. Later on, we can check for loaded arrays, or like checking to see if there's anything saved in the server. Otherwise, we will jump straight into this. So for each player, we are going to now clear the contents of the square IDs and the player item square map. And so the item square map will be, again, the interlocking IDs. So it'll store the data in that array for what's in that square. So clear, we want a array clear it player item square map, and also for the square IDs. Oh my, there we go. All right, so we want to do that first. Now that that is set, we got to do where is the all right, now we need to create the grid map. So now we have the creation of the inventory, but we don't have is the creation of the actual grid to identify like the storage array. What's up, Sith Lord? It goes. It's its own beast. It's complicated. It pisses me off at times, or but it'll be all right. We're gonna get through this. You've got some complicated stuff going on in that game that you're developing there, guy. I was watching as you were trying to, in your last, like, what, 6.3 stream, trying to explain some of the force logic of moving around like that. No way No way. I'm too dumb for that level of... Yeah, no, I do. I live for it. I do. I live for it. But it also makes me want to cry. You know? Like, yeah. Let's be real. It hurts right in the soul. Let's see here. Yeah, yeah, it's you know, the reality is that the things in life that are worth doing should come difficultly. Because if not, there's no sense of accomplishment. You know? So I'm making a game called TerraFarmers. I'll run the project. Right now I've got the makings of a biome system, a drone that can plant stuff, and a harvesting system in the works. Whoop. And right now we're working on a procedural inventory, and I'm doing a concept where to represent weight in an RPG or survival game, when you carry an item that is specifically heavy, it'll reduce the total number of inventory pockets you have. Like, imagine we're playing Minecraft or something, and imagine you had your full layout of inventory. If you were carrying something that's like super heavy and is identified as a heavy object, say a researchable item or something, it will reduce your total carrying capacity. So each of these squares may still hold up to 60 or 100 items, if they're like a small stack, but certain specific types of things will weigh you down. And rather than doing that in a way that slows the player, I thought it would be... Yeah, yeah, a little bit. The concept is a bit more advanced, but I think that we're gonna get it. We're gonna get it. So, let's see here. I want to start mapping. We know now what the last square is, but we're not saving each inventory square with its own ID. We want to do that. We want to assign a value to it. But I don't know if I want to do that yet. Oh, this is Gdevelop. Gdevelop 5.3. How are you trying to get it to work? I'm still learning game development. Oh, yeah. Yeah, so basically, what we had before was a looping system that was buggy, that wasn't quite doing what I wanted it to. So now what I want to do is use the integrations and the extensions that are available inside of Gdevelop to store and save the data from each cube that I'm generating. So I'll have to do a for instance check, like for each inventory square as it's being created, because we are creating it here, but then we need to do another loop for each inventory square, save the square ID into the square IDs array, or like into its own ID section. So we're going to copy the square ID and store that. I think. I think that's what I want to do. I think that makes sense. I would know if I had my brief. I don't know where I put it. That was the whole point of this video. It's like, guys, I'm going to be way more organized. And then I'm like, where did I put it? ADHD is such a cruel, cruel beast. Let's see here. Oh, thank you, Seth. I appreciate it. No, I also work in some Unreal as well, and I find that their blueprint system is visually complex, but once you start finding the rhythm and understand the way that they use their terms, the flow is, I mean, it's much the same. As long, I would say, if you're learning game development, you should go learn your fundamentals first. Like, go take a C++ class, there's tons of YouTube videos or something like that, or learn some Python or something, and just learn the fundamentals. Learn what these variables do, and what a Boolean is, and a modula, and all of these other things that are going to be important on how, because they are true across all other languages. The uniqueness in each language is its syntax and the way that you fundamentally write it, whether it's object oriented. Okay, awesome. So you already know what I'm talking about. So yeah, from there, it's just learning how that is represented visually inside of Unreal's blueprint system. And you can do everything. In fact, if you want a multiplayer game, you kind of have to use blueprints. So anyways, let's see here. Let me see if I can get my workflow back in order here. Jump way back here to the bottom of my worksheet. Yeah, I won't do C++. I don't like it. You can't make me. Nope. I'm not doing it. Yeah, I mean, Python and GD script, or Godot script, or whatever they call it. I think they call it GD script. Um I mean, it's basically Python. Almost absolutely Python. And node object node Python. Uh it's wonderful. All right, so we want to start adding items to our square map. Uh So let's consider how we're gonna do this. Man, this lo-fi music in my head is so much louder. I mean, I know it's like way turned down for you guys, but it's like blowing my ears out. I can't even focus. I'm trying to think, and all I'm hearing is beats in my noggin. Let's see here. So when we add something to the structure, it's kind of, I mean, it's more or less, we're going to be starting to do like the pickup script, if you will. Um, we'll do it called the trigger events. So in this particular trigger event, we're going to want to create a action that triggers the moment where we need to then add something to our storage array. Because right now we just created the array and we have all of our squares. Like if I run through our debugger and I refresh over here, let me close this. If I go to our inventory square, max size, those are all messed up. That's not good. Wait, why isn't that? No, that makes sense. All we're doing is generating a square. Yeah. Okay. Using Unreal, that is painful. I did a lot of Lua, Gary's mod. I played a lot, like I did a lot of Counter-Strike and worked with like a Manny mod, which was Lua based back in the day, like Source 1.6. Um, dude, yeah, I've been staring at the screen for so long. Like, let's see. For each player, uh, find the next available square and push an item to. Oh, thank you, Lime. I'll catch you later, Limester. Yeah. Next time I go live, I'm gonna have all of them glued somewhere. I promise. Like I can't even like I looked at my sticky notes, they're all gone. I don't know if I accidentally just like mass deleted them all, but I'm like I spent like 3 hours compiling that list, and I'm like, all right, guys, we got this time. I'll be way more organized, and then wasn't. Yeah, yeah, for real, for real. Uh, I don't have a stream schedule yet. I get on in the afternoons though, usually. Like it's specific standard time. So but sometimes I do it during the daytime too. I haven't found out a particular stream schedule yet. I'm just kind of focused on making content, letting the engine do its thing, pick up my afternoon. Yeah, yeah. Neurodivergence unite. Yeah, yeah, indeed. All right. So here we're going to when I don't know if I have to do it for each player anymore. When a player triggers, when a player is in collision with an item, we're going to start with the items. With items, we're going to start our map. So we only really need to map anything when we first pick up something. Otherwise, we're just kind of running endlessly code. Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it, Sith. I will catch you later. Thank you. Let's see here. All right. When the player is in collision with an item, and then for each player for each of those players, uh, I appreciate the likes, guys. Thank you. Okay, so for each player that the use size is less than the max size. So for each instance of player, uh, and the variable of the player uh, used size is less than that's a text variable. We want a number variable of player. Whoa, that's a global variable. Number variable object player. Inventory use size is less than the player's inventory max size. So every time we got to check for this, right? Because we don't want people to be able to pick stuff up that they're not supposed to. So, now we need to set the next square ID to the next available square. I mean, right? Now how are we gonna do that? Chicka chicka. All right, let's see here. So, player set the player's next square ID to the next available square ID logic. This is GDevelop 5.3. Welcome to the stream. Let's see. Oh, set the next square ID. writing stuff down in my notes. All right. Let's see. We have to set a next square ID. Initialize next square ID to a default value. And while the loop is less than the player's max size, the loop index, so whatever index we're looping, we want to set a player square ID to contain to check to see if the player square ID contains anything already, because we're gonna want to be able to like stack certain things up, right? Am I a professional game developer? No, God, no. Uh, I've worked in the industry. I've worked in publishing. I've worked with various game companies writing gaming articles. Traveled around a lot and did a lot of game conferences and things like that. Was a live streamer for some time. But now I am working on a passion project. I've got a few other projects under my belt, but I'm trying to tackle a really complicated thing in my head. I'm trying to make an inventory system that is procedurally generated based on a player's sort of a scaling inventory. And so if you are carrying heavy objects, they'll reduce your inventory size. And then if you're carrying advancements, it may like open up your pockets or something. You'll get more inventory. And it'll dynamically kind of shrink and grow in real time. So kind of working through some of that right now. I'm running the logistics into my head and trying to figure out how we're going to let's see here. All right, so we need to do a loop index. I guess got to remember how to functionally do that. Instead, you can use for each event. So for each to iterate over a range of values or objects, the index of the iteration is not explicitly called. That is referred to as an iterator. So I and for each number looping from a number range. So for each max inventory from 0. So we're gonna basically do this again, like to repeat for each instance of a person. We're gonna repeat something for each instance of this player. If the inventory use size is less than the max size, my brain is breaking right now. Why is this condition, the variable? Okay, so the variable here that we need to set, we're gonna set a object variable player. We're gonna do inventory dot next square ID and set that to 0. That's not a number. There we go. And then in this, while the why is it so frustrating? While the is less than the max size, variable we need this to be oh, we don't want that right now, just test. Let's give me a second there. The heck, man? I'm gonna bonk my forehead on my keyboard. I've been staring at this for too long. I'm reading my. I know right now I'm just kind of sitting here quietly, but I'm looking at my screen here on my other side, writing this stuff out into a brief, so that way I can figure out how I need to do this visually and then make it visual for you. So this is what's wrong. First of all, I think this needs to be an arrays. Oops. What did I do? Inventory square IDs to the player inventory index. So yeah, that's good questions, man. Uh, well, that's a complicated question, right? And it's full of biases. So my education, I have a background in user experience and UI development. And so from a professional standpoint, uh, is well, and so here's the thing, and as you just brought up about designing, where do you begin with design? That's a very common question. That's what us UX designers kind of facilitate, the frameworks of that. It begins kind of with an idea. If you are a programmer, and you have uh, that experience of putting logic down and knowing the flow, then it's what a game really is a bunch of features that eventually get polished and connected together. So you start with one feature at a time, whether it's player movement, adding your health, but it helps if you know what you don't want first. So I kind of start with a design document that says, I want to build a game that does not uh, that does not do these things, and that helps me decide on what to do next. So if I'm playing a side scroller, do I, design, at the beginning what you know what genre you're starting with, right? Select your genre, select one of many different categories, and start sticking to what those do. So in a side scroller, are we collecting things? Are we brawling? Are we, And so as soon as you know kind of what direction you're going, you can immediately go, we're not doing a brawler, so we don't need to punch. We don't need to worry about all of these things. We don't need to jump. We don't need to run. We don't need to dash. And that kind of quickly narrows down to what you can do. Well, we can jump. We can move. We can do this. And it starts by just slowly building out each of those features. And once you have a somewhat of a design document that has brought you to the point where you understand a basic concept of what you're trying to create, then it's about actually logistically finding out how do we do that. And for people who don't know those, like what to do and what not to do, it begins with a subjective perspective anyways. We begin by doing audited research. So we go play other games of that genre, go see what they do, what do you enjoy from those, learn from them, and then break them down. What's happening in the game when you press WASD? We're moving. Well, how do they do that? Emulate that, create that, work towards obtaining the same sort of movement or whatever. And that then, it's like, well, okay, well, where do I begin? Do I begin with a Unity? Do I begin with Godot? Do I begin with GDevelop, Game Maker? And that's really kind of, you have to decide what's in the scope of your capabilities. And generally, I suggest starting with 2D, because 3D is a whole nother dimension. And it's a lot more math. But I would recommend, starting with some sort of 2D development and building up your features. And that's what we're kind of doing here. Right now, we're trying to build a feature for our inventory, which is going to be a big part of our game in the long run. So we want to make sure that that's well polished and has the quality that we're looking for. So in here, though, in our square IDs, we want to add a variable, right? And the variable that we want to add the square ID, and it's going to be equal to the player inventory index. So now we're adding that to our game storage. So let's break our game real quick. And we want to launch into the debugger. Go to our refresh here and see what's working and what's not working. Inventory square. Aha. There we are. So we do have, those are now being mapped. So we can see that here. Oh, that sure does make a lot more sense. I was wondering, I was like, I thought I did this right. Why isn't that posting? I was looking in the wrong section. So each of these, each value, each square ID is now being assigned inside of our player. So now we know in slot 0, the value of it is just 1, because we're just saving the ID. So value is actually just ID. So ID 1, ID 2, ID 3. But in an array sense, it's array number 0, ID 1, array number 1, ID 2. But I wanted it to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, rather than 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is how it is on the keyboard. And we're going to be assigning those. So, all right. let's see here, inventory index. Add number, player, inventory, add. To the square IDs. And this is actually where we need to do double mapping here. So effectively, let's see here. I think one of the things that we're going to need to do is to set the ID for each cube, because right now the cubes don't have an ID. Well, I guess they have an inventory index, don't they? Let's take a look here. I read the first part of what you said. I'm kind of waiting to see what you say next, but I think I kind of know where you're going with that, but I'll wait. I mean, that is possible. Yeah. But Steam may not be where you want to begin. You know, using an engines like for GDevelop and Game Maker and other like itch.io, all of those places are places that you can upload to and have people test your games out, download them, get feedback on, and things like that way before you ever get to Steam. Yeah, you definitely don't want to let's see. Object ID. Okay. But not necessarily either, because they're there for that reason, right? These are asset packs to help you get started. Some people don't have artistic ability and they can't afford to pay an artist. Now, I'm a pixel artist myself, and so I draw my own assets, but I also buy other people's assets from time to time, and it's very common to have some. I mean, to some degree, have like almost every mobile developed game ever. Like it feels like on the if you look up any of the Google Play Store games and they have like the basic menu that kind of looks like Clash of Clans, that like the level, the stars, they all seem to have the same exact. They're all using the same UI asset pack that somebody got from the Unity store or from the Unreal store, and everybody uses that, and that stuff is pretty common. But if you outrightly just plagiarize, obviously take someone else's work and say it's yours without proper credit, you're probably gonna get flagged and shut down. Yeah. But I don't think that's what you're asking. So each inventory square needs to start getting its own ID. And so a sub event, and in this case for each inventory square, we want to set the ID to the we want to set the variable of inventory square, the we'll do ID. and we'll set it to what the whatever the square ID is. We got to do player inventory square ID. I believe. Let's try this again. Let's check this out. Refresh and go into our squares. Now we should see ID 0. We're not getting, oh, it's not iterating. We're not getting the +1. And I think it's because we could probably just do it like, oops. The index. Maybe. Did I break it? Am I not doing that right? Oh my goodness. Come on. Preview. Refresh. Get out of here. Refresh. Ah, there we go. There. Now, they're also getting the right ID number. So now we're storing the ID for each inventory square that's being created. Change the ID of that square to the inventory index. And that's important because here in a minute, we're going to start saving this index to, we're going to be saving the square ID as well as inventory square ID. So we're basically going to put these things on top of each other. So our square IDs are our actual inventory count, and then in our developer. So there's kind of like 2 layers to what we're doing here. So on each of these, there's the spawn for it, which is like the initial layer, and then we have the visual side of it, which is the creation of the actual node. And the node itself has an ID storage inside of it. And so right now, we'll also want to do like a quantity or something. So now that we have an ID for it, this is ID cube 1. And if I created another ID cube 1 over here, let's say we had a different level of inventory that was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 down here with your keyboard, it would correlate with, like, they would match. And so we're going to be storing that into our items grid because we may put an item ID inside of the square ID, and we're going to need that information to know like what item got picked up. So here soon we're going to do a collision event with our item that then when it does this, add it to the array and add it to the first empty slot that doesn't have any item in it currently. And then later we'll be checking if there is an item or if we are picking something else up. No, reading the comment that you put up there. I mean, yeah, the definition of success for you is that people play your game. Marketing is hit and miss, but millions of dollars, that's ridiculous. No. You got to get connected with your community. Reach out to, get whatever engine you're using. There's a Discord for it. Join the Discord, talk with other developers, share your work in progress, build a community. That's what a community manager does, right? And when you're a solo developer, you take on many hats. You have to wear all of the things that a normal studio would do. And time is money, right? So you can spend money and save yourself time, or you can spend your time and save yourself money. Okay. So, wrong thing. Bring back up my sticky note. Of course. Happy to help. Okay, so we need to set the next ID now to store that. So okay. So here we are again. If the inventory use size of the player is greater than the player's max size, if this is true, set the next square ID to the next slot index, and then we're going to add 1 to it. Um, okay. On item get, so on collision with the item, for each instance of the player, we're checking if the used is equal to the max. And if we're gonna loop, so for each for each child, or for each player dot, it's gonna be a child. For each, we gotta loop through the square ID. So like for each loop, inventory player dot inventory dot square ID. Oops. each instance, so for each object, for each of the player inventory IDs, we're going to loop through that. Find the square, so for each instance of player ID, so now we're saying for each instance, so as we loop through, if the variable ID of the inventory square equals the item's variable ID, and in this case, we're colliding with an item, and so we need to go into our are we doing this anymore? Get rid of that. Slot origin, we don't need that anymore. For each item, and in this case, our items are the item radish, plants, nope, objects, nope, collectibles, there we go. The item's radish now needs a variable. The variable is an ID. Object ID. That'll be a number. Actually, we can make this a string. And we can say our object value, current object value, and of the object ID, object of object name. And we'll call this radish. So for each instance of ID, if the variable ID of is equal to if the ID of this needs to be my math ain't math in here, boys. We need to do a map. I'm doing this. I've set us up to do a map, the item square map. I don't think we actually need square IDs in this. I don't think we need to set this, because square ID, that's what we're doing here. We want each square to be the same as the inventory index. And then we want to send that data to the square map. So when our inventory isn't full, we're gonna go backwards here a little bit. Oh boy. I'm losing my mind over here. Am I doing this the right way? It's like that's a question I keep asking myself. Is this right? So for each player, whoa, we're getting a little crazy here. For each player, if the inventory isn't so big, right? Set the variable, initialize the next square ID as 0, so that from there, the first square ID for each inventory square ID, the variable ID of the player square or the inventory square. Take this. Well, okay. So for now, for each instance of the player that is inclusion with the item, and if they can pick it up, we want to do something. We want to trigger this to we want to add the item to the inventory. So add the items text no, we don't want to set it. Wait. Handle the add actions to find the next available square ID and update the item square map. So if the items variable what do we call it? Object name. Object name. Something like that. Let's go check it. Object name. Okay. The object name. If the object name of item is equal to radish, items list, inventory, in this case, inventory, add, player. The inventory name is player. Add the item radish. Which is effectively so now what we also want to do is delete the item. There we go. So now we've got the radish destroyed, and we have an item in our inventory, but it's not appearing yet. We also want to start mapping now the items. The item was added to our inventory, but we need to access for each we're gonna end up doing something crazy where it's like we're gonna match up the objects' names. I mean, this does add it to the inventory, but I'm not sure if we're gonna do. I'm not sure how I'm gonna do this. This is starting to irk me. Gotta read. I'm reading the documentation here, trying to sort out how to do loop indexes in. Okay, we're gonna repeat. I think we just take this actually. We're gonna just repeat this many times. So for repeat for each oh yeah, we're gonna add a new one. Do not. That's not what I want. All right, guys. Well, I'm a little burnt out. We're gonna continue this tomorrow. Um, I'm gonna get my notes back together, and our next stream is gonna be very precise, very to the point, and hopefully we'll be able to get this this whole thing ironed out super quickly. And then move on to the next stop because this inventory is just killing me. Um, I'm on it. I know, like we're getting really close. And I thought I had all my stuff together, but we did. So that's okay. We'll continue the Redux tomorrow. All right, thank you everybody, and I will catch you on the flip side. You know what to do. Cue that outro.